Kevin. So, since the last time I've seen you, apparently you have died.
That is true. Partially, nearly.
Okay. What happened?
September 21st, 2019 was going on a run. It was going to be just any other normal day. It was hot out. It was approaching dusk. I had my running shorts on, my running shoes, and no other identification, nothing else. I have a 6 mile route that I usually run. I'm training for a half marathon. It's muggy. It's hot out. Um, the sun is not setting yet, but it's getting to that point in the day where you can't really make out stuff. There are parts of the route that are busy and parts of the route that are not busy at all. I run by an EMT station, which is providential as the story unfolds as part of this running route. And then I also run past a graveyard. It's called Cascade Cemetery in Cascade, Michigan, in the southeastern edge of Grand Rapids area, Michigan. And I thought, you know what, I'm not feeling all that well. It's hot out. I can tell that my rhythm is off, and I'm just gonna take a walk and not worry about time on that particular day, and just kind of have a little bit of a recoup. So I walk into the graveyard. There is somebody dressed all in white in the graveyard. His back is towards me. He's not wearing first century clothing, so it didn't stand out to me as like anything really all that unusual, except for the fact that he is rearranging stuff around a grave. There's some dirt. And I'm just thinking, man, that's just kind of weird. I wouldn't dress in an all white suit. It almost looks like a hazmat suit working on a grave in the dirt. I just wouldn't do that. And I just kind of tucked it away, didn't think a whole lot of it, walked through the graveyard, memorized a couple of gravestones. There's a smaller portion of the graveyard that is actually in a fenced in area that's an older cemetery that they had to move in 1966 when they built 96 through. So I remembered that. I remembered reading a couple of gravestones and that particular marker indicating this older graveyard within a graveyard that was relocated, exited out, ran downhill, and then entered on the busiest part of the route, which is Cascade Road. Thornapple River is right to my right, and to my left is the entrance to Pine Ridge Elementary School. So I'm running right along the river's edge. There's a bluff above me, or a ridge, which is the name of the school, elementary school. And then at the very top of that, to give you just a topographical overlook, is the graveyard. So the graveyard's at the highest point, then the school. Further down the ridge is the river and the actual trail that I'm running on adjacent to it. I don't really remember anything. There was no pain. I didn't feel anything unusual. I know I was having an off day running, but you know, you have those all the time. The next thing I remember was leaving my body and looking at my body, which is now lifeless, and exiting from that tent, if you will, that we all occupy, our skin suit, and feeling tremendous relief. It was, surreal, because you hear about this stuff and you read about this stuff, and I was like, wow, this is happening to me. I don't really know what's going on, but it feels very natural. Feels like I'm kind of bumping into my true self, and that this skin suit I've been wearing is just basically allowing me to have a human experience, which I have always believed, as long back as I remember. I didn't have the words to articulate it, but I've always believed that we are spiritual beings that happen to be having a human experience, that there's something about us that is immortal. It lives on forever. It's the God spark. It's the God particle. There's something about us that touches immortality. And it may not necessarily be the body that we live in, but it's something else, and it's divine. And I had a divine encounter. So I'm soaring up now over the ridge. I'm not staying in that static state. It's very dynamic. I'm actually leaving not only my body and having an out-of-body experience, but I'm soaring now over the ridge, over the elementary school, back to the graveyard. And now the individual who was all dressed in white, his back is no longer towards me. He's facing me, but I can't make out any facial features. There's a lot of light that's coming out of him and surrounding him, but it's not the harmful. It's not like a head beam, or some kind of massive amount of concentrated light. It's more warm, welcoming, and calming, but also ancient, in the sense that it's light that darkness has never really touched. And darkness really isn't a thing anyway. Darkness is the absence of light. The same way I think evil is not necessarily a thing, it's more the absence of good. It's not an original creation, it's something that is in converse or opposite of something that is original, that is true. And I just felt like in this space of light that's emanating out of this person, that it was light that darkness had never touched. And it preceded darkness, and it's something that can never be consumed. An eternal flame. It's an eternal light. It's the original source of light. It's like the light that lit the world, if you will. Um, and some of that can be found in various scripture references and other writings, that this person, who I believe was the risen Christ, is actually the light of the world. I think he was there with his father at the beginning of everything, and that from this person. And I'm basically quoting a lot of, or I'm poetically synthesizing what you can read about in John the Gospel, the first chapter, or Ephesians chapter 1, or Colossians chapter 1. It talks about this idea of creation coming out of this person of Christ, this cosmic Christ, if I can use that word, not necessarily the historical Jesus, but the cosmic Christ that came and was incarnated into the person of Jesus, the historical figure, and lived before, inside Jesus, and it also exists outside of Jesus, if that makes sense. So the other thing that I felt, not only was it a light issue, but there was just tremendous amount of love that was coming out of this person, to the extent that I believe that it was love that fear has never felt. And when you think about all the decisions that we make, and we make thousands and tens of thousands of decisions every day, um, there's just a vast majority of those decisions are based on negative emotions, based on fear or hate or indifference or apathy. But when you find the true source of love, it can't coexist with fear. It drives it out. It pushes it out. It gobbles up all the real estate in your interior geography. And I felt like in that moment, and I've never felt this in my human existence, I felt like there was just nothing to be afraid of, that everything I was afraid of was immaterial, had dissipated, had dissolved itself into something that was more powerful, which is love. And I felt like this love was coming out of this person, that it was perfected love. It was perfect love. There was nothing about it that was selfish. It was just there. And I felt that. I felt a tremendous sense of belonging in that moment. And then the third thing that I felt in that moment, and again, I'm now in a different time space continuum. So I'm not in Chronos time, which is where we live. It's lunar, it's cyclical, it's seasonal. We watch the clock, and the clock determines our events of the day and how we schedule our day, and how the harvest happens in agriculture communities. But I was outside of that dimension. I wouldn't call it, I mean, it's something that's been around for a bit, but it's called Kairos time. It's God time. It's celestial time. And yeah, gosh, it could have been 1,000 years in the time space continuum, but it could have been a nanosecond in Kairos time, because it's a different dimension. So I'm in a moment that's suspended, and time is clicking, and other people are doing things to help me get back to the time space continuum that I'm not aware of. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But in that moment, it was as if time itself was suspended. It was timeless time. I was outside of time. Time really meant nothing. The moment meant everything. And I suppose you could call it the eternal now. A lot of mystics will use that kind of language. It was a now that never ends. It's just always present. You're always available. Kind of the way life is meant to be. And what we spend a lot of time trying to figure out is, how do I stay present? How do I stay in that moment? I didn't have any trouble with it at that time, because I had no other options. I was in a narrative that I did not control, that was being written. I was invited into it in a freak kind of way, if you will. But I wasn't writing it. And so I was just experiencing it. I was staying in the moment. And I felt like not only was I experiencing a tremendous amount of light and a tremendous amount of love, but I was also experiencing life that death could never defeat. That there's a part of our being, I look at it as a trichotomy. We're a spirit that happens to live in a body that also has a soul, emotions, will, determination, intellect, all those things. But in that moment, it felt like, wow, there's a part of me that's going to live forever. There's a part of everyone that lives forever. And and the source of that is standing in front of me, the source of all life, the gate, if you will, to God. Like this is he is the portal. It's like walking through him. If he had in that moment, I had this distinct sensation that if he had gathered me to himself, if he had embraced me, that he would have in a way that I can't even begin to describe. It would have been as if he almost became a portal. For those that are Star Trek or sci-fi fans, like a Stargate, right? It felt like he had that type of capacity where if I had entered into him, if he had held me close and embraced me, I would have been ushered into the presence of God in all of eternity, in heaven, if you will. He didn't do that. And what he did do instead, which is eerily similar to many other near-death encounters, NDEs is what we call them, he just spoke very succinctly. Um, Again, time is suspended. So it felt to me, because it was late September, it felt like his words were coming to me like a leaf blowing in the wind. And he just said, it's not your time. And then there was a dramatic pause. And then the words came to me as he was turning away from me and the light started disappearing. He said, your mission is not yet complete. And then the next thing I remember was coming to in the ambulance. Lights are beeping. I hear muffled voices. I can't speak because there's an oxygen mask over me. They have a defibrillator machine over me. And come to find out that cardiac arrest, which is what I had, it's not a heart attack. It was a cardiac arrest, which is all electrical. A heart attack is plumbing. You can actually drive yourself to the hospital with a heart attack. And it involves pain, and it usually involves reparative work. You have to have a stent or a new valve or something. Your heart is damaged. It's a plumbing issue. Something is not working. Whereas a cardiac arrest is electrical. And it's just an anomaly. The closest thing that the doctors came after I was in the hospital for a bit, they weren't 100% certain, but they thought the best explanation was that I had what they call a SCAD, a spontaneous coronary artery dissection in the lower left atrium of my exterior heart. They felt like there was just scant evidence of a minuscule artery that had burst and had disrupted my rhythm to the extent that I went into arrest. And typically, the only way they can bring someone like that back is through a defibrillator. Fortunately, two nurses happened to be driving by, along with a coach who had done CPR. These were emergency room nurses. One of them was a nurse practitioner. The other worked at Mary Free Bed. And they just did everything right. They did CPR on me. They never got a pulse, but they never gave up. And they were working on me for upwards of 10 minutes. But they wouldn't have stopped if I hadn't looked dead. So my coloration was, kind of violet purple. And so who knows how long I was there before they actually stopped. So I tell people I didn't have a heartbeat or a pulse for up to 15 minutes. It was probably in the 12 to 13 minute zone if we can piece it together correctly, which is really dangerous. I mean, even a couple minutes is catastrophic. But when you get into that 15-minute threshold, your brain activity actually goes away. And that's the last thing that is actually to go flatline. Even after your heart has stopped beating, there's some electrical activity in your brain neurologically that still stays alive. And so I was really pushing the threshold there. And fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I passed an EMT station on the run, and they responded very quickly. I came to find out after we had done a taping with Boston Scientific, because I wear a defibrillator now, and they had sponsored me to go to Everest. We filmed a documentary, and now they're doing a big story on it for their employees next month, about 4,000 employees as an employee appreciation day. They're bringing 3 or 4 of us, people from around the world who've had good, happy stories to tell to their employees who build this technology. I learned from one of the guys who had come right there on the spot as we were filming just a few weeks ago that there was actually an individual who had arrived earlier, elderly gentleman, and he just did what probably most of us would do. He just kind of freaked out and didn't do anything. and they thought he was not going to be okay. It appeared that he was just really, really upset by what he was seeing because he had stumbled on apparently a dead man on the trail, and they actually asked him to make the call because they were working on me. Uh, cracking my ribs, because if you do CPR right, you're gonna hurt somebody. Um, and they also did old school, mouth to mouth. They did everything right, and that allowed my vitals to get the amount of oxygen that they needed, so that when I was um, shocked back to life, I still had some cognitive abilities, even though that took 24 or 48 hours for that to come, full circle. So when everything went really, really wrong, everything went really, really right. I believe it was divine. The whole encounter, I think, was already laid out. I was 10 minutes behind schedule because I had kill time in the cemetery. Uh, two of the three that came to my rescue before the EMT, before the fire team came with the defibrillator and shocked me back to life, were also off schedule. One of them shouldn't have taken that exit. It was a family dispute, and at the last minute, someone veered off and took the exit off a Lowell. And usually they don't come that way, so he shouldn't have been there. And then the nurse practitioner was off schedule because their kid had to go to the bathroom. And so they were upset about that, but they were 10 minutes behind schedule. So just the exquisite, and it was just before the sun started to set. It happened to be on the busiest part of the trail. It happened to be on the most visible part of the trail. Lots of traffic. There was still enough light to be able to make out that, hey, this guy is not doing well. He's under great duress. Um, because it looked like I had the wherewithal to collapse in such a manner that I was resting. My knees were up, my hands were behind my head. And for the casual bystander, or someone driving by rather quickly, they would have thought, well, it's a hot night, he's just chilling out. It's kind of odd, but hey, whatever. It wasn't until the coloration took effect that people began to realize, wow, this guy is, yeah, he could be dead. And fortunately, the medical personnel responded in an incredibly professional manner. And that's why I'm here. A lot of people have asked me, boy, do you think that was an angel, or who do you think that was? And, a lot of people with near death experiences describe this bright light or a person or a tunnel, um, almost kind of like the Millennial Falcon, going into warp speed, or driving with high beams into a snowstorm in Michigan. It has that feeling of just acceleration, but you're entering into another dimension that your mind can't really comprehend, because we're finite creatures and eternity is infinite. Um, my main takeaway was that what we believe now determines where we belong in eternity. And I know that's not really popular, because we have all kinds of belief systems around the world where reincarnation is a popular ideology, belief system, where it allows you to come back and to kind of redo, hopefully not as a donkey or some beast of burden. But there's various religions out there that have, a purgatorial experience where there's a purging and you can repent, and there still is an opportunity to make things right or make amends. But I believe historically, and from an Orthodox position in the Christian faith, that there is death, there is judgment, and where you belong in eternity is all connected to what you believe in time. So when I give this talk, I let people make their own choices. I could be wrong. I don't believe I am. But if I'm wrong, there's really no harm done. But um, if I'm right, then I'm really right. But if I'm wrong, I'm really wrong, because I'm misguiding people, not just in the time-space continuum, but eternity. So if I am wrong, I don't think there's really any harm done. But boy, this is a big issue, and we're not just talking about the 85 or however many years we get here on this life. We're talking about a never-ending existence, um, where our spirits go and get reanimated. And that's the beauty, I think, of the resurrection, is that if we believe that Christ indeed resurrected from the dead, then that becomes a template for all of us. He showed us the way of what it looks like to die, but also live. And it's an incredible um, master template that the world celebrates at Easter. And even those that maybe don't believe in the whole gospel story, there's something fascinating about that eucatastrophe, to drop a Tolkien word in there, where everything was just going so wrong. and the world seemed to be on the edge of complete ruin. And then something unexpectedly brilliant and beautiful and just supernaturally good happens, totally unexpectedly, which I think you could call my event also a eucatastrophe of sorts. And we all have these Easter moments in our lives where things are going really bad, and then some unexpected turn of event, and it all of a sudden becomes right. And I think that's what death provides us, is it's a door to another dimension that we spend billions of dollars trying to evade and escape or prolong. And in fact, it actually is a mechanism that God has created. It's a door that is hinged on hope. And he leaves this thing called death as part of our human experience because he knows that door is necessary to enter into the next dimension. As a human, we fear it because we don't know what's beyond it, but he does. And so he allows death to still remain as it is. However, death is not victorious because someone has conquered death in the form of Christ. And as a result, when we pass through that door, we are resurrected with the same power that resurrected Christ in 33 AD. It's the same power, and it gives us the same hope that our lives continue in a better body and an eternal body and a glorified body. And depending on one's eschatology, we even come back to here, to earth, right? So there's some incredible hope there. So when I faced this person, I don't believe it was an angel, because in all the biblical accounts that we have, unless the angels came in disguise, humans always interacted with angels with incredible fear. And usually the first words out of an angel's mouth is fear not, or don't worship me. I mean, how could you not be trembling standing in front of an 8-9 foot tall, being that's all dressed in white with a flaming sword, and they're glowing like an ember taken out of a fire? I mean, how do you respond to that? Well, in some cases in the Bible, people had, I guess, what you could call cardiac arrest because they fell down as if they were dead. They don't use medical terms, but when you connect it, it's like, oh, maybe these people had an encounter with the divine. They just didn't know it because they didn't have the language for it. Um, and so I did appear as if I was dead. I had a divine encounter. I didn't orchestrate it. I think God knew everything that was going to happen before it happened, because he's not bound by space and time the way we are. He can be anywhere all at once, everywhere, forever. So he's not, there's a different dimension that he evolves into. And so I felt like when I was encountering this person in the afterlife or at the edge of the afterlife, that he was my brother. There was a sense of familial connection where his father was my father through a spiritual adoption process. And then secondly, I felt like he was my captain. Like, here is a man that I could follow into battle and start and proliferate our men's movement called Grace Explorations, and all these base camps that we start, and all these storytelling events that we create for men to hear other men's stories and maybe be able to retell their story as part of God's bigger story. But thirdly, I felt like he was my king. And as such, he deserved not only my confession of sin and, hey, I'm a sinner and I've done wrong and I need forgiveness and will you forgive me, which is really at the base of the metaphoric mountain, but I also was his beloved son. And as a son, I was made a prince, if you will. And as him being the king, he deserves my highest allegiance. It's not some little prayer that I pray to escape the other opposite end of the spectrum, the opposite of heaven. It's more about, man, how can I just pledge my highest allegiance to this person that's given everything for me? How can I, in return, give the same? A pastor that we both know always said, a life on life, right? A life for a life. And that always stuck with me. And I believe that that's true in this story, that it should be a life for a life. So I felt it was the risen Christ. It didn't feel angelic. It felt like this was the Son of God. And for whatever reason, I had this encounter to bring clarity. It's now going to be woven into, in part, into a documentary that we created called The True Summit, which will release digitally in 2023. It'll be shown locally here in a theater in Grand Rapids on November the 6th for 3 showings, probably 750 guests. And so it'll be woven into that story of climbing and adventuring, and what does a true summit look like, and how do you view life after experiencing a near-death experience. what changes inside of you. And our whole idea is that we climb a lot of false summits. We make a big deal about things that don't really matter. And what really matters in the end is the people that we love, and having enough courage to speak the truth into their life, not my truth or your truth, but the truth, capital T, which I know is not popular. We don't like to believe that there are absolutes, but the world has been governed by them for many millennia. And it's a pity that in the final stretch of our human existence that we, in our own hubris, can't embrace that. It's really a pity, because there are laws out there that guide the universe. And one of them is there has to be this concept of absolute truth that binds everything together. For Star Wars fans, it's the original force. It's the supernatural force that glues everything together and holds all of our smaller truths together, because it's guided by a bigger truth. And I believe that that truth is Christ. And I believe that how we interact with him, and how what we believe about him, specifically the resurrection, took Jordan Peterson a couple of years to get to that point. But he always said, and I remember him saying it like 4 or 5 years back, if I can ever get to the point where I realize that the fulcrum of the Christian faith is that Christ indeed resurrected, then I can become a believer. And it took him several years to get his mind wrapped around that. But I think he's gotten to that point, and that has changed the trajectory of his life, because it is a monumental event that not only dates our calendar, but the consequences of that are incredibly substantial. Because if Christ did indeed die and go into the land of the dead and come back and give us the template for resurrection, then it not only changes our life here, but forever now.
Outlaw.